welcome to my channel and welcome to another series of video how I struggled with watercolor in Epic World of Tolkien. I already did one video with my first project here, and when I prepared paper there with my clear acrylic gesso, I decided that maybe it would be nice to use it on several pages, like to make my work quicker. Currently, I use clear acrylic gesso by Spanish brand Vallejo. I put a picture of it on the screen so you would know what is the case of my problems. And I did that first page which I already published on my channel, and I also covered with gesso background for these orcs. I continue to use my idea that with pictures with orcs or goblins, everything have to be a little bit dark and dirty. You don't have to think about something beautiful for the background, and you can justify if you have dirt and stains. So that's why I do similar pictures, similar in style and similar in subjects. But I do love these orcs, they are quite interesting to color. Well, for this picture, I have the idea that maybe orcs just stepped from some dark place, maybe cave, into normal grass. So I wanted background to be quite dark, almost black, with small color accents of maybe yellow, maybe green, and then in front I would do normal grass and maybe flowers, so there will be small contrast. And in my stash I had very nice new Ukrainian watercolors. Color is jade green, it's granulating, and on normal paper, when you apply it, it's beautiful mix of dark green with small inclusions of golden yellow. So it creates beautiful stains from green into gold by itself, but of course not on this paper. I think that my previous suffering with this paper and watercolor haven't teached me anything, and I again selected granulating watercolors and I decided to use it for the background. Honestly, it turned to be even uh, worse looking comparing to the first attempt. So here I started to apply watercolor on the background, and I immediately discovered that probably when I applied my Vallejo clear gesso and then when I closed the book, maybe gesso wasn't fully dried yet, and I think that it slightly stick to the page on the left, and tiny parts of this layer probably were deleted from the page. When I started to apply green color on top right corner, I immediately noticed those areas where pages were stick together, and in such way surface was damaged and watercolor didn't want to lay down on this paper at all in those damaged areas. And when I applied this granulating watercolor, the same thing happened as with the previous one. Paper created waves. Um, all paint gathered along those vertical waves, and during first 10 minutes all I did, I just moved these pools of water and paint along the paper because it didn't absorb watercolor at all. It created a very strange stains of color, and it was possible to see also brush strokes, how I applied that clear gesso. That uneven surface, it also gathered watercolor pigment along those brush strokes. Anyway, after 10 minutes of suffering, I realized that even for orcs page, it looks so ugly, so dirty, and very I don't know even how to say. Again, I was close to the abandoning this page, and to say that I quit with such attempts, maybe I need to select something where I can normally work with regular pencils. Maybe I need to switch to acrylic, but I was quite curious. Do I manage to save this page? So after 10 minutes of fruitless attempts to do something normal with watercolor, I let my paint and my paper to dry completely, and I returned to this page next day. After drying, watercolor paint on top of clear acrylic gesso created a very rough texture on the page, very similar to sandpaper. But I decided to use it as a starting point for experimenting with my other art supplies. So I decided to mask the ugliest areas with my gel crayons. I have two brands of them. First are King Art and second are Distress crayons. And I don't use them very frequently, but I have a little bit of experience how to use them on top of acrylic paint, again to mask imperfections on the background. Here I decided that this underpaint was quite similar to acrylic, so probably those gel pens or gel crayons could stick nicely on such surface. So I tried to select among my crayons everything in yellow, green, blue, green, moss green colors and to apply them on top of watercolor. I tried first to apply them as I usually do with brushes, but here it didn't work. Brushes deleted uh, color from previous layer. Anyway, they were too rough. And in the end, I simply distributed pigment from crayons with my fingers and it worked perfectly. Those crayons, they have a very delicate texture, like very soft oil pastel. And when I applied them on my previous page, I was afraid that they would be slightly sticky, but after a couple of hours they dry perfectly well and they don't mess up with the page on the left. After drying they stop to be sticky, so you can quite well use them on uh, in coloring books even if they are double-sided. So here you will see how I tried to mask the ugliest areas, and I think that it added something interesting to the background because I managed to do at least some lighter areas and my background started to look exactly like I imagined, almost black with small additions of color accents. After this first successful attempt to save my background, I decided to continue experimenting and to add a little bit of pencil pigment on top of my background. As I said, paper here is quite rough, so it would eat paper, it would eat pencil pigment. So I decided to experiment with not very expensive pencils and I selected a Star Joy Gold. They have nice turquoise colors, exactly what I wanted to add here. It really very surprising that paper here without gesso is perfect for all pencils. You can work even with cheap pencils and they would blend nicely, but it creates such problems with water-based media. Anyway, as a last step of saving background, I used a couple of shades of Starjoy Gold pencils and I added almost invisible bluish turquoise shading on the background and I also darkened a little bit area around the figures of orcs. After that I finally was ready to start coloring main elements, my main heroes. So even if beginning of this coloring again was very disappointing, I was so frustrated how watercolors behave that I can't use my nice dark granulating watercolors which are perfect for the subject of these pictures, but they can't be used here technically. In the end, I was happy that I experimented with gel crayons. I found where I can use them. They are nice, but as I said, I don't use them very frequently, and when I have such opportunity, I'm really happy. Maybe it's not the most beautiful and most exciting coloring, because orcs, it means that we use a lot of gray colors, maybe a little bit of brown also. But for me, it really was quite instructive and interesting. It helped me to get better knowledge how I can save uh, even ugliest backgrounds. And honestly, it really put a stop to my experiments with watercolors and this type of gesso in this book. I have another bottle by another manufacturer, so maybe I will try it later. But I think that my next page here I will try to color with acrylic. I did this one with watercolor simply because I already put gesso on it, so it was prepared in such a way, and I decided to give it a second chance. But no, it's enough for me, and I hope that my next video will be with acrylic paint.